ago, they made a case against me because of my book, the novel, The Fall of the Imam. And they said she should be divorced from her husband because she is an apostate. She's not a good Muslim, and she should be divorced. And I won the case also. So their technique is not killing by the military wing. It is by condemning people in the court. And they succeeded, because my colleague before me, just 2 years before me, in 1999, they succeeded in issuing a verdict from the court to divorce a professor from his wife. And he escaped. He lives now in Holland, Dr. Nasr Hamid Abu Zaid. He escaped. He fled with his wife because he refused to divorce his wife. He refused to obey the court. So he fled to Holland, and he still lives in Holland.
Come si chiama lui?
His name?
Sì.
His name is Dr. Nasr Hamid Abu Zaid. Abu Zaid.
Okay.
He was professor in Cairo, University. Yes, Cairo University. And he wrote a study in 1991 or 1998. He wrote a study, just a study, academic study about Islam. So the Muslim brothers with the fundamentalists, they took him to court, and they said he is not a good Muslim. He should be divorced from his wife. And the court issued a verdict divorcing him. So that's the danger, that the court itself was infiltrated by Muslim brothers and fanatic groups. So when my case came, I was the second case in Egypt that they tried to divorce me from my husband. They didn't succeed with me, yeah. They didn't succeed because there was a big international campaign against them. I had a lot of support from lawyers in the Arab countries and even from Italy. I remember a lawyer.
Anche noi.
What's her name? She was Nino. She was in the parliament. A lawyer. Bonino, Emma Bonino.
Emma Bonino.
Yes, Emma Bonino. She came to Cairo and she attended the court with many lawyers from Tunisia, from Morocco, from Algeria, from Egypt, and other countries, from Spain. They came to Egypt, attended the court. So the government said, it's better not to divorce her because it's a scandal. It will be a scandal. So I won the case. So I am a winner.
Qual è il suo giudizio oggi su Nasser?
Even when he was alive, of course, I was against the British and the king. When Nasser came, we were happy. We were young and we were happy, and we had a lot of hopes. But he disappointed us, in fact. He betrayed us, the people. He became very dictator. There was no real socialism, as I said. It was fake, pseudo-socialism. And also his enemies were great, because the British, the American, the French, and the Muslim brothers, and the right wing, and the rich people were all against him. So his battle was great, and he didn't use the people, because I remember I wrote articles, and I said, and especially after the defeat of 1967, I wrote an article, and I said that Nasser should depend on the people in his battle, because his enemies are too much. the Americans, the British, the French, and the rich people. And he depended on the army because he was a military man. He didn't have a political vision. He didn't have a vision as a political man because he's military. He believes in the bullet, you know. So he despised us, we the people, the students who brought him to power by our demonstrations during the 40s and 50s. In fact, we brought him to power. He betrayed the movement of the people, and that's why he failed. That's why he failed. Nasser failed because of his dictatorship, because he was military, his mentality was military, and he betrayed the people. So I was with him, but against him, you know. I was with him relative to the king, but I was with him also relative to Sadat, because when Sadat came in 1970, he was much worse than Nasser, much worse. He put me in prison, and he put all the intellectuals in prison. You know, so it's, we became, in fact, Egypt started to go backward and backward. Since the defeat of 1967 and then Sadat, up till today, we are going backward. But this verdict is a good sign that the government now, because a verdict like this cannot come without the support of the government, cannot come without the support of the government. So the government of Mubarak now feels the danger of the Muslim Brothers. Now they know that the Muslim Brothers compete with the government and they need power, they will take power. So they want to, now I am supported by the government relatively to have such a verdict.
Quindi era una dittatura militare quella di Nasser?
Yes, this was his limitation. He was not really able to have a political, social movement and to depend on the people, because that's his mentality. You know, you cannot change a military man, because he doesn't believe in the pen, you know. We writers, we believe in writing, in the mentality, in political movement, but he's a military man. He believes only in the bullet, you know. That's why I am against the military. I am against using the military in politics, in war. I am against the war. I am against the whole mentality of the military. It's against democracy. The military is against democracy because it uses power. It doesn't use the mind.
Quindi lei, dopo che è stata nell'ospedale al Cairo, è andata anche come medico nel villaggio natio.
Can you repeat again? What did you say?
Lei è stata, dunque ha fatto studi di medicina, poi è stata nell'ospedale come medico e poi è andata come medico anche nel villaggio natio?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yes, yes. So, what's the question?
Sì, questo. Cioè, è come, ha notato una differenza nel villaggio fra gli anni in cui lei era vissuta lì e gli anni in cui poi è tornata come medico?
Yes, that's a good question. Well, I remember this was in 1956 and 1957 and 1958. You know, in 1956, there was a war in Egypt again. The 1956 war we call it the Triad War, when the British, the French, and Israel attacked Egypt in Port Said. But in fact, Egypt won the war because of the conflict between the US and Britain and France over Egypt. Because Egypt is like, if I want to make it simple, Egypt like a woman, a body, a piece of meat that many external powers want to eat. The American, the British, the French. So sometimes they combine, they collaborate against Egypt, and sometimes they have conflicts. There are many conflicts between the US and Japan, between US and Europe. Now there is a conflict between the European Union and America and US and Japan. So the capitalists have their own conflicts. And this is good for us because when our enemies fight, then we benefit a little bit. So in the War of 1956, the British, the French, and Israel, they sent 3 armies in Port Said to fight Nasser. This was after the nationalization of the Suez Canal, because Nasser, when he came to power, he nationalized the Suez Canal, he nationalized the banks. That's why they said he's a communist, because he needed money. People were starving. So Britain and France and Israel were against the nationalization of the Suez Canal. So they combined efforts and they attacked Port Said. And Nasser has to fight back. And then the United States appeared to be against that, to support Egypt. But in fact, when I read history after maybe 40 years from the war, we discovered that the US collaborated in this war, yeah. So anyway, why I went to the village? Because I graduated and I worked in Cairo hospitals as a chest physician and surgeon, etc. But then I went back to Cairo when Nasser started what he called socialized medicine, a program of socialized medicine, and he encouraged young doctors like me to go to the village and to work among the village people instead of staying in Cairo, because he said that we have to fight the bilharziosis, the tropical diseases in the villages. We need, to mobilize young doctors to go to the village. That's why I went, because I believed very much in this socialized medicine, that medicine is not to have a private clinic and to be rich, but medicine and health should be given to the poor with no payment. That's why we called it socialized medicine. That health is a human right. I remember I joined the medical syndicate. I was elected by the general syndicate, the medical in Egypt, and we had many new slogans. We said health is like air, should be given free to people. The peasant should not pay for health. We should not have private clinics. So I was a doctor, I could have a private clinic and be rich. So I said, no, I am not going to have a private clinic. I am against private clinics. I will go to the village and fight bilharziosis and tropical disease. And there were many, many young doctors with me. And what was funny, that the Ministry of Health at that time, they said only men doctors who go to the villages, not women doctors. Because they said women doctors should stay in Cairo to be protected. But to send young women doctors to the village is dangerous. They may be raped. How come? How come they go at night on the back of a donkey? How can I ride a donkey and go to see patients? It was ridiculous. So I wrote against that, and we had a battle. I had to fight as a woman doctor to enter and to go to the village. So it was really ridiculous. So I succeeded, and I was the first woman doctor to go to this community socialized medicine. And I chose my village, in fact. I chose the village where I was born, and I went. So I found a lot of difference, but also a lot of similarity, because the village moved very slowly, very, very slowly, socially, politically, economically, the slow movement. Poverty is there, but it's less. Many, many families sent, for instance, my father in the village was the first man to go to school, my father. When I returned to the village, almost all the families had students that went to school and universities. So you see the difference. The education started to be prevalent, and this is under Nasser. Why? Because Nasser made the education free. Even college was free. He said that education is like air, should be for everybody. Health, like air, should be for everybody. So there was a movement from during these years, 1957, 58, and during the 60s, until the defeat, 1967, then everything went back.
Quanti anni è stata medico nel villaggio natio?
I went in 1956, 7, and 8, 3 years. 3 years, yeah.
E poi dopo, dove è andata come medico? Dopo?
I went to my village, and then after that I came to Cairo.
Okay.
And I worked in the chest hospital.
Ospedale?
Yes, I worked in that chest hospital.
Nell'ospedale?
Yeah.
Quindi è stata in ospedale per alcuni anni e poi dopo come medico privato oppure come medico?
Yes. No, I always worked in the Ministry of Health.
Sempre medico pubblico?
Always, all the
Nel
time.
pubblico?
All the time I was against to have a private clinic. I was very much, we were a generation of young doctors who didn't believe in private practice. We believed in socialized medicine. So I was very much against private, but I opened my private clinic for a very short time, and then I closed it. When I have problem with the government, I open my clinic. So it was really hectic, but it was very, very, very short period when I had a private clinic. But I worked all the time with the Ministry of Health, in the hospitals of the Ministry of Health, in the health education department, in the preventive medicine, so I was always in the socialized medicine.
Facciamo una pausa, 10 minuti.
Ok.
10 minuti. qual è stata la trasformazione culturale in Egitto. Chiaro, è evidente che il Cairo è una città grandissima e poi ci sono tutte le altre città, i villaggi dell'Egitto, grandi differenze tra il Cairo e le altre città, tra le altre città e i villaggi, anche tra Alessandria e Menuf. Ecco, qual è stata la trasformazione culturale dall'avvento di Nasser in poi, fino ad oggi? Trasformazione culturale.
Well, I can say that from Nasser to Sadat, and then from Sadat to Mubarak, Nasser died in 1970. Sadat was killed in 1981, October, 6 October 1981, and Nasser in 28 September 1970, and Mubarak came to power from 1981 till now 2008, 27 years. Mubarak in power, 27 years. So the culture changes accompany the political and the economic changes. Culture is not separate from political and economic and sexual and religious. And that's how I teach creativity and dissidence, because creativity is built on the ability to connect what I call the fragmented knowledge, because we receive in the university fragmented knowledge. People study politics and know nothing about health. People study economics and know nothing about politics, or study sexology or history or culture and know nothing about, and especially culture. Culture became a fashion, especially in the United States. They usually try to say culture, culture, to separate between culture and politics. But I don't do that, because culture, like religion, is a servant of the political system. When you have a progressive political system against class, against patriarchy, against slavery, then the culture changes. And the religion changes also. You have a better interpretation of religion. You have a better cultural value system, because the political system is the power, the real power in a society. So whenever the political system changes, and the economic, because the political and the economy go together, then the culture changes follow. So under Nasser, because the political regime was relatively progressive, relatively socialist, culture changed. And we had many cultural values, new cultural value system. During the 60s, I was young and I was encouraged. We had a slogan, building the socialist society in Egypt. I was brought up in this during the 60s. So we were young doctors, very much in favor of social changes, against class, against feudalism, against colonialism. And the government encouraged that. And if Nasser was not a dictator and not a military man, Egypt could have changed totally. But because of his limitation, the defeat happened. And also because of the power of the external powers, the military external powers. So then culture when Sadat came, Sadat changed the whole political system. Egypt became, under Nasser, we became a little bit independent. We dismissed the British, the king was dismissed, Egypt started to be independent. We had the nationalization of the Suez Canal, of the banks. Poverty started to be better, you know. So, and there was a lot of encouragement, a lot of writing during the 60s, the project during the 60s, and I wrote a lot during that time. But we were critical of Nasser at that time. I was about to go in prison by Nasser. If he survived, I could have landed in prison because we started to criticize him, and he didn't like criticism. But there was a movement and flourishing, encouraging women, encouraging equality between men and women, you know, against religion, because Nasser, in fact, put the Muslim brothers in prison, and he was fighting Al-Azhar. Nasser also was fighting Al-Azhar, the very, very reactionary Islamic university. When Nasser died, defeated and died in 1970, Sadat came, and with Sadat came the American project, the American invasion of Egypt, the economic, the cultural, and the political invasion of Egypt under Sadat. And that's why I went to prison. The Camp David Treaty, the peace, the so-called peace with Israel, it was not peace, it was war. Because under this Camp David, under this peace treaty, Israel started to take a lot of weapons from the United States and to develop its nuclear power. Now Israel is the superpower, military superpower in the region. So the American project in Egypt, they started with Sadat. They controlled Sadat, and Sadat was really a military man, ignorant. I met him, I had discussion with him, I attended meetings with him, and that's why he hated me. And you know, most military men, they know only the gun. They don't respect writers or the mind. They believe only in the gun. So Sadat was a military man, and he knew nothing about anything, just the military, and he was used by the American powers. And so the whole project of Nasser finished. The whole project of social medicine finished. We went back to private. The privatization under Sadat started the privatization of everything, even of medicine, because we paid a lot of years fighting for socialized medicine. We went back to private clinics, private medicine, capitalism, multinationals, foreign investment in Egypt. So Egypt became the market. The new Sadat, his policy was called open door policy. So Sadat opened the door of Egypt economically and politically and culturally. I'll come to the culture, to the Americans. And we started to have more poverty than before. Now, because Mubarak is the continuation of Sadat, now we went back to the 2% society, that 2% of the people own everything, including the family of the government, and 90% of the people are poor. In fact, 60%, that's the latest statistics, 60% of Egyptians live under the poverty line, under $2 a day. 60% of the Egyptians now. So there was a backward movement, and with it culture. Sadat, in addition to that, encouraged the fundamentalists, the Muslim brothers, the Christian fundamentalists, and all that. And he used religion to veil the mind. people started to be religious, fanatic. My sisters started to be veiled because my father never veiled us. We were 6 daughters. They all went to university. Nobody was veiled. Under Sadat, all my sisters started to be veiled. So he veiled the mind of people because of the media, of everybody speaking about religion, about Islam, about Christianity, about the church, about the mosque. So the language became religious. And with it, the culture became religious. And there was a paradox, very interesting paradox. What usually I call the Americanization of Egypt, the Americanization of Egypt and the Islamization of Egypt. You see this phenomena in Cairo. You can walk in the streets in Cairo, especially in the rich districts, Gezira Club, American University students, and you meet young students, young women, who cover their head, and they have blue jeans and their belly is naked, you know. So they have the Islamization of the head and the Americanization of the belly, you know. It's paradox. How come a woman covers her head and leaves her belly naked, you know? But this is exactly what's happening. The Americanization, this is the American culture. Consumerism, what's American culture? I teach in the States now since many years, 15 years ago. The American culture or the capitalist culture in relation to women, that women are sex objects. They are naked. I was attending a party in New York a few weeks ago, and all the women, their breasts are naked. This is the fashion. What's that? Women are sex objects. And usually nakedness and veiling go hand in hand, you know? Women either veiled under religion or naked under consumerism. And even the makeup. When I go to the United States, they tell me, why don't you make plastic surgery to hide your wrinkles and to appear young? I say, why should I appear young? You know, I don't care about my age. I'm above 70, I don't care, I'm proud of my age. They said, no, but you should look beautiful. I tell them, what do you mean by beauty? What do you mean by beauty? And they put makeup. I never put makeup. I call the makeup postmodern veil. The postmodern veil. And that's consumerism. How women are trapped being a sex object and a religious object. Women go to the church. Now you see women in the United States are going back to the church and going back to makeup and nakedness. You know, you see the paradox, but they go hand in hand. Religious fanatism, Christian fundamentalism in the United States, Islamic fundamentalism in Egypt, Jewish fundamentalism in Israel, they go hand in hand with consumerism and nakedness of women. So that's the culture. That's the culture of capitalism and patriarchy and class, and we are living this culture now.
Quindi il fondamentalismo favorisce la chirurgia plastica. Il fondamentalismo favorisce la chirurgia plastica.
I didn't hear. Can you repeat? I didn't hear. Yes. Yes, it may appear paradox, but you see that the Muslim brothers, they don't care except about the hair. There is a problem in their mentality. If you meet the wives or the daughters of the Muslim brothers, they put makeup, mascara, they have red lips, but they cover their head, you know? So usually I tell them, why you hate the hair of women? Because they are, I ask some of the Muslim brothers, I tell them, why you accept lip red lips or plastic surgery or kuhl, the mascara and the artificial lashes and all that. And you are caring only about the hair. You want to cover the hair. So what's the problem of the hair of women? What's that? And they don't have an answer. They don't have an answer. They allow their wives and their daughter to put red lips and to have high heels. But women should cover their hair. So it's a political symbol. It has nothing to do with morality or protecting women's sexuality from men or anything. It's a political symbol to show their power, their political power, that when all women have the veil or the scarf, this is the political power of the Muslim brothers. So it has nothing to do with morality or culture or anything. It's politics. And even, I say religion is a political ideology. Some people think religion is about morality. No. If you study the holy books, there is no morality. There is double morality in holy books. Morality for men and morality for women. Polygamy for men, monogamy for women. Even in Christianity, in Judaism, there is polygamy for men, double standard. So whenever you have double standard, there is no morality. Because morality means equality. If you have one standard of morality, that's real morality. So religion, there is no morality in religion. There is politics, there is capitalism, there is feudalism, there is slavery, there is inferiority of women, there is killing the infidel, there is the conception of virginity, honor killing. Because some people in the West think that honor killing was invented by Islam, which is not true. Or virginity invented by Islam, which is not true. We don't have Virgin Mary in Islam, but there is Virgin Mary in Christianity. So you see that the whole package that is now called Islamic culture or Islamic, fanatism is not typical of Islam. It is typical of the three monotheistic religions, not only Islam. But now Islam became the enemy of the US and Britain and some of the Western powers. After the collapse of the traditional enemy, communism and the Soviet Union, Islam became the enemy. So that's why there is a lot of exaggeration of the negative things in Islam. Of course, in every religion, there is negative and positive things. Islam, there is positive things, and there is negative, like Christianity. But now the political neo-colonial powers exaggerate the evils of Islam. It's political, it's all political.
L'atteggiamento del potere politico in Egitto verso gli intellettuali, quali variazioni e trasformazioni ha avuto fra Nasser, Sadat e Mubarak?
Towards the intellectuals?
Sì.
Yeah. Yes.
Sì, sì.
Under Nasser, we have censorship. Very, very clear censorship. Anything against Nasser, forbidden. Anything against the government, forbidden. Any right. All my work under Nasser, there was a censor in every newspaper, in every magazine, in the publishing houses. Even my memoir, I published my first novel, Memoir of a Woman Doctor, when I was very young, 20, when I just graduated. This was in 1956-7, under Nasser. Almost half of my novel was cut by the censor before it was published. So there was frank, clear censorship against anything against Nasser or the government. But the government allowed some socialistic ideas. If I'm against capitalism, they welcome that. If I am with the nationalization of the Suez Canal, they are with that. So if I am with the government projects, because there were very positive projects, like nationalization of the Suez Canal or the socializing medicine, so if I write about that, they welcome that. But if I become critical, they prevent that. So that was under Nasser. Sadat came, the censorship changed, because Sadat came under the slogan of democracy. He said Nasser was a dictatorship, and now we have democracy. So I believed him. So I landed in prison, Usually they tell me, why you went to prison? I say, because I believed Sadat. He said there is opposition, there is democracy. So I started to criticize him. I landed in prison, But there was no democracy. It was dictatorship, like the dictatorship of George Bush in the States. He speaks about democracy. He went to Iraq for democracy, but he went for the oil. We know that. So how Sadat was very much Americanized in his mind to use democracy to hide dictatorship. And there was censorship. But censorship under Sadat was different from the censorship under Nasser. Under Nasser, the censorship was clear. Under Sadat, it was hidden. So, for instance, if I give a novel to a publishing house, he doesn't publish it. Under Sadat, I had to publish most of my work in Lebanon. I could not publish it in Cairo under Sadat because there was censorship. But he said there is democracy, no censorship. You don't see it, but it is there. And it's done like that, secretly, that no publisher will publish me. So I have to go to outside Egypt. I publish in Lebanon. So, and then Mubarak is doing the same democracy. When even the word democracy is very much used by Mubarak in the presidential election of 2005. Mubarak said, I welcome opposition under democracy, and anybody who would like to run the election against me, welcome. So I declared that I am running against Mubarak. I believed him, like Sadat. So I started running against Mubarak, and the police was running after me. The police were going after me everywhere, preventing me from any meeting. So I boycotted, and I made a statement. I said, there is no democracy. It is dictatorship, but dictatorship under democracy. And that's the subtle deception of the American mentality and of the American capitalism. They use there is no democracy in the States because some people wanted to write an article about my work in the New York Times. They didn't want, because they know my political position against the George Bush, against the Israeli invasion of Palestine, so they know that, so they didn't publish it. But they publish who? I wrote an article called Muslim Women in the Market. In the United States, the media encourage Muslim women in the market who criticize Islam only. That's why they don't publish me, because I don't criticize Islam only. I don't play the trick that I am against Islam only. I am against all religions. I say it frankly, because I studied the three holy books, and I'm not going to to compromise on that. And they don't want that. They want me to glorify Christianity because George Bush is Christian. The 90% of the American people are Christian. And then the Jewish lobby is very strong, the Jewish lobby. So the Jew-Christian movement and power is very strong in the United States, and they support George Bush. So if I criticize them, they don't publish me. So there is no democracy. No democracy if you are really critical. So if I compare the attitude of the regimes towards the intellectuals, it is more or less the same, but it's different. Under Sadat, I was in the blacklist. Under Sadat, I went to prison, I was in the blacklist. Under Mubarak, I am in the gray list, you know. Gray, it's gray list. I am prevented from the media, I am prevented from publishing, I am silenced, but in a very subtle way. So,
allora, ritorniamo alla questione. A un certo punto lei diceva che mentre faceva gli studi, anche sia in collegio, sia poi studi di medicina, ha incominciato a leggere cose di psicologia, di psichiatria. Quindi poco fa abbiamo visto la foto di Thomas Szasz, no? Diceva di aver letto alcune cose sue. Non so se anche Michel Foucault, La storia della follia, ecco, oppure Freud, se ha avuto modo. Ecco, questo capitolo di cui non abbiamo accennato ma non ne abbiamo parlato finora. David Cooper, che è stato qui, abbiamo fatto a Londra, alla sede dell'Accademia Reale, noi un congresso nel 78, 10 anni dopo il congresso fatto da Lang, Cooper a Londra presso la stessa Accademia Reale nel 68, Dialettica della Liberazione era nel 68. Nel 78 noi abbiamo fatto a Londra un congresso sulle esplorazioni della follia. Allora, qualcosa, no, su questo che noi diciamo Freud, la psichiatria, Thomas Szasz, anni 50, anni 60, 70, le sue letture, i suoi studi, le sue obiezioni. Ecco.
Very good question. In fact, of course, everybody read Freud, and it's very important because Freud, in fact, was a revolution in relation to religion, sexuality. Of course, he had his limitation in relation to especially women, and I was very much critical of Freud because of his sexual limitation in understanding the sexuality of women. I'll give just one example. In one of my books, I wrote that Freud cut the clitoris psychologically. He did psychological circumcision because he said that a mature, sane woman should have only vaginal orgasm. She should not have clitoral orgasm. This is nonsense. How come that a woman has a clitoris and then she ignores the pleasure of the clitoris, the orgasm of the clitoris, and concentrate only on the vaginal orgasm? This, number one, is impossible because you cannot separate the clitoris from the vagina. It's all one. But Freud was the product of patriarchy and class, and he was biased also against sexuality of women as a man. So I was very much against this limitation, against this psychological clitoridectomy. And I mention it in one of my very early books. I said in Egypt we do physical clitoridectomy, but Freud did psychological clitoridectomy, which may be more dangerous because a woman may think she's free, but she's not free. So anyway, I was critical. In fact, when I read Thomas Zass and Ronald Dreng and David Cooper, these three people helped me to open my mind, because I studied psychiatry the Freudian way in Egypt. Up till today, they teach Freud. They don't know about those people. I just discovered them while I'm traveling, and I read them, and I said, oh my God, they have the same ideas. So I started really to be happy that there are people who are speaking about me, though they didn't speak much about women, no. But they spoke about the real self, about against the power, the political power. They made some connection between political power and sexuality. So they helped me to confirm my feeling. But I don't remember that any one of them really spoke about women, psychology in a different way. I don't remember. My ideas about women's psychology came from my experience, in fact, my daily experience in life and my observation. And in fact, many of my ideas didn't come from books. Many, of course, books help, but many of my ideas, which I wrote in my fiction and nonfiction, came from my experience in life as a woman, living in a society against women. So I wrote that, and I started to understand the limitation of all those psychiatrists from my experience.
Diceva che ha incontrato una volta sola Mustafa Safwan.
In Paris some 40 years ago. Many years ago. I remember we had dinner or something, maybe 40 years ago. There were friends, and they told me, I didn't know him. They told me, Mustafa Safwan, you don't know him? I said, no, I don't know him. They said, oh, he's a psychiatrist, and he is very much with Lacan and all that. But in fact, also he's still a man, So...
40 anni fa c'era il 68. Che effetti ha avuto il 68, il movimento europeo del 68 in Egitto?
Oh, yes. I think in Egypt we follow very much the French Revolution and the British and all revolutions. We followed the Marxist parties and communists in Italy, and the communist parties and movement in France, and the 1968 student revolution. We are, like many African countries, small countries, we follow Europe. I don't mean that we are dependent, but we look and see what's happening in the world. For instance, in the United States, they know nothing about Egypt, or they know very superficial things, that Egypt is the pyramid, something like that. They know nothing. But we know a lot about the Americans. We know a lot about the Italians. If you ask the Italian people what they know about Egypt, few people will know about Egypt. Yeah, because we are a small country, but when a country is superpower, they are conceited and they don't care to study other people. But because we are a small country, we are very much interested in other people, and we like to study them. So I think the 1968 movement confirmed our ideas, because in 1968 we still had Nasser, and the student movement was a socialist.